Wonderful talk. Don't run away yet. Don't run away, please, Kevin, because we're going to bring our wonderful speakers today. Please, Brad and Adam, if you could join us in this wonderful conversation, that would be fantastic. We have accumulated and gathered a couple of questions in there. And so this is the time to get all the answers in the world. Oh my God, there are so many questions. I mean, there was one question that I kind of want to bring up, although I think it's a little bit maybe off topic, but it's always a great conversation starter. And somebody is writing Figma ... sketch ... What if we're stuck with Adobe XD?
You're host. I mean, like it's an end of life product, right? So that's I think one thing to keep in mind. We work with teams who've been on Adobe XD. We've been working with teams who are still on Sketch. Sketch is a little bit, further along and is still, a viable product or whatever, but Adobe put a fork in XD. So I think that's a conversation to have with your organization. That's just the reality.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I mean, I didn't know it was more like a statement of almost like a loud voice in the big room. So I just wanted to give it a little bit of an echo here as well, right? I don't think that it's kind of, we're expecting a big answer at this point, right? One other question that came up, and I think that's maybe a good question for Adam to kick off a conversation. There were a couple of questions, and one of them was around multi-brand, multi-theme design system, and especially like how do you even measure success if different brands, different themes, different products use very different parts of a design system? And how would you, I don't know, somehow set up sort of a metric or some sort of a measurement for that kind of use case, which I guess is just almost like a sentiment to the fact that many systems today are getting really, really complex and really messy and really big and really global, right? How would you approach a bits like that?
When you think about measuring success, it a lot of times what you want to do is just get a one number that tells you everything we did was successful or not, right? And that's kind of what you think about, but it's okay to break it down and essentially say and break down what you're measuring into various different areas of let's say your design system, right? So if you have separate areas of your design system, different teams that are working on it, or areas that are affecting different brands, like let's say you have two brands, two design systems, they work together, but there's differences. It's okay to measure a certain part of that design system. You don't have to say, here's our one measurement, and if we don't hit that, none of the design system was successful. But it's okay to say, look, we had this problem, and it might be a small problem. And so we made some updates and we solved that problem and it impacted the business. But we did a lot of other stuff too that was important that maybe didn't impact the business directly. And so in terms of when you're, I talked a lot about picking business goals and you want to align to those business goals. Not everything you do has to be aligned to a direct business goal that's going to affect you in Q2. Because sometimes it's really important that it's like, hey, we need to do some foundational work. And so that's not necessarily going to affect the business in Q2, but we still need to do it, right? So it's okay in those situations to have a smaller metric that you're aligned to, or maybe even Q2 is we're just doing baseline work. We'll get to some of those, other metrics in Q3. So in the situation where you have multiple brands, smaller numbers, separate numbers, that's totally okay. As long as they're aligned to something and there's that strategy behind it.
Yeah, maybe kind of just building up. Thank you so much for your answer, Adam. Building up on top of that, there was another question that kind of came as I think it's kind of connected to that as well. And the question came from Lukas, and hello, Lukas, wonderful to see you here. And that's maybe also a question for everyone, really. How do you separate design system influence from other elements influencing business success? What I think the point here is, it might be that you have very different moving bits of work that you're producing, but then if you want to kind of measure the business impact, it might be that there is some, I don't know, a big marketing campaign that launched at just the same time, right? Or maybe some teams are working on something else that actually goes very much against what you're trying to do here, right? Or create some sort of friction. So if you want to be saying, okay, I did this, or our team did this, and we launched, and this is the impact that it had, how do you isolate it from all these other factors that are kind of surrounding business impact most of the time? It's probably a question for Adam more than everybody else, but I just wanted to build up on top of that.
Yeah, this is a challenge in the marketing world as well. It's like, hey, we did something, we updated the website, we put an ad in market, we did some marketing and we saw a result. Well, which thing that the marketing team did was, caused that result? And there's not always an obvious thing that you can point to. And so when let's say, you're a design system team, you're partnering with product, you're partnering with marketing, it's also okay to say that the thing that we did influenced the result that ended up happening, right? So, the design system update or something that we did was a part of the final result. It influenced, because all these pieces had to come together, and that's okay to say. So you'd partner with the marketing or the product team and say, we did this thing, it turned out pretty well. We saw X% improvement, or we launched a product, or we did something new. It went well, or maybe it didn't, but let's assume it went well, and we were a part of that. And here are all the teams that were a part of that, and we were aligned to them. And the things that the design system team was aligned with what the product team needed to do or the marketing team needed to do, versus doing something totally in left field, all the way over here. It's like, we're over here on our own, doing our own thing because we think it's cool. Yet the rest of the company's over here, we're working on something else. And so it's that alignment piece and the influence piece that's okay. It doesn't need to be we did this and here's the direct number that it caused. Yeah. Influence is okay.
Yeah, that's a very good point. From there, I think it's a good kind of segue to go to Brett and Kevin, because I know that you're working together, right? And I'm just really curious how that works. I really am, because not because Brett is a difficult person to work with or Kevin is such an adventurous AI person to work with, but I'm wondering, just you're adventurous.
I'm a difficult person. I'm a difficult person.
I think you are. I don't think you are. But what I mean that what is really interesting for me is, how does it work? So would you say, for example, Brett, does AI in some way define or guide your design decisions? Or is Kevin's work then again in many ways really kind of the implementation, the documentation, the technical bit of the design system? How does it? What is what, if it makes sense?
How do we actually work together?
Yeah. For example, I'm really curious, how does it flow? Yeah, so because if you actually think about it, to me, it seems like, okay, so we're working on the design system for a big corporation, big company, right? Yeah. And then there are processes like governance, and we need to run workshops when we talk about, okay, what kind of components do we need? What is the scope of what we're going to do? Yeah. And is it that AI then comes later? That is kind of like, we're just, when we're documenting things, when we are building out things and whatnot, that comes later? Or is it in some way influences design decisions as in the very beginning, let's say, of the project? I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah. So the way that we tend to work is we partner with companies, organizations, and stuff that are either establishing their design systems, evolving their design systems, merging their design systems, destroying an old one and building a new one, going through a rebrand, going through a replatform. And a lot of what we plug in to help them do is to sort of execute that work and have them build successful design systems and successful products that are built using the design system. So kind of coming back to the metrics, just to sort of quickly speak to that, it's like we help teams reliably, predictably, and stack up success stories, right? That's a good, there's no success like success, right? It's just like, we launched the checkout rebrand or the redesign. Cool, great. That's a thing. The design system was a part of that. Next time we moved over to this new flow or this, the homepage, and then to the product detail page and whatever. And kind of getting that sort of momentum is the best way to sort of establish a design system as kind of critical infrastructure for how your organization designs and builds digital products. So with all of that, what we get to see is a lot of different organizations, cultures, what they struggle with, things like, oh yeah, unit tests aren't here again, as Kevin and I will, and Ian along with us will sort of come in, we'll audit and evaluate the team's technical infrastructure, what they have in place, how good their accessibility is, how sturdy or robust and sophisticated the architecture is, and then make recommendations and then help the teams kind of implement those recommendations. So to date, and until this sort of crop of AI tools kind of came along, I think that it's been like, okay, yeah, we're going to work through this stuff with you. And what we have at our disposal is our experience, sound architecture, our experience we've learned over the course of many years of doing this. And I think with now, like, AI is sort of adding this extra layer to help enhance what we're helping organizations do. If it's like, oh, unit tests are missing for the entire component library, well, we can manually create those unit tests, or we could, sort of enlist AI to help us do that. And so I think that Kevin's really kind of coming back to the question that was asked, is like how we work together is like Kevin's, and forgive me for speaking out of turn, Kevin, but it's like you're like hard at work understanding the nuts and bolts of how this AI stuff works. And then sort of like through our lens of like working with these different companies, we're able to say, how might AI assist with this problem that we keep seeing happening at these organizations? And then sort of some experimentation and working sessions and stuff happens. And what Kevin was showing off here is, I think, the result of a lot of that stuff, which is really cool. And just so it said, it's like that stuff is like ready to go now. It's like, now it's just a matter of like, actually, like, I think really like putting it through its paces.
Right. So does it mean that Kevin, you feel like you are basically just AI magician and that's your title and you're going with it? Well, AI design systems
totally short. Before any of this hit the scene, like I just so it said, it's like Kevin is an absolutely brilliant technical architect, developer, touching Drupal, touching web components, touching.
Well, I didn't want to dismiss like Kevin, like, oh, you're just AI magician. Of course, that's not what I meant at all. But I'm just wondering, Kevin, how do you see this sort of your role? I mean, at this point, what you actually end up is, or maybe I'm just going to let you answer. So how do you see AI kind of fitting into your role and into kind of big scale design systems through the lens of the work that you're doing here?
I see it as an extra tool in my toolbox to be able to advise clients to, if I see a problem, I have the classical way of doing it, which would be get more manpower on it, get more people looking at it, and we can introduce extra technologies, or take a sidestep and think, can we create an AI colleague for you and get something in there that you can use, we can leave behind. I've had it in the past where we've finished with clients and they still email us and they still ask us questions and they still want more of us after we've gone. And having these AI tools, I don't know why sometimes, but but having these extra tools that we've made for them, they have a little piece of us that they can still use and they can generate and create value from. It's just an extra thing that keeps on giving rather than just a static piece of work.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I can imagine the wonderful world in which we're just saying, hey, yeah, we need to re-platform these platforms. Can you do this overnight and write everything and feed it into yourself? And then the next day you wake up and you're like, so we have 17 different versions here. Okay, let's take a look at what we've got, right? That's very curious. But maybe also to wrap up, and I think I'm going to look into if we have any more questions in there as well. Looking into the future, I mean, obviously we're meeting together to talk about the future, the bright future. That's not, I'm just trying to be optimistic here, I guess, at this point. I'm wondering, what is the future going to be like? Especially, again, I mean, so kind of looking into AI, there's been like this big conversation about Gemini 1.5, just outpacing ChatGPT at this point. And And I'm just wondering, not even like, is it the true or not, but where are we heading here? And maybe that's kind of, again, coming back to Kevin at this point as well. Do you feel like everything's just getting bigger and faster, and we're hitting the limits of physics in terms of transistors in machines, and it's kind of the ultimate limit? Or is it getting smarter in some way? Where are we getting?
I don't want to make any sort of predictions on where the quality of these AI models are going to be in a year, because I'll most certainly be wrong. They'll probably outpace what I can probably predict right now. I don't have the creativity to be able to imagine that. But one thing that I would like to say is when people use these tools, is to think about using them in a way that benefits us rather than benefits bottom line corporations, the bottom line of a corporation. These tools are there to make us work more efficiently and to work better. I would like to be able to see a future where we work smarter with help, but less, and we'll be able to really be creative and rapidly iterate on ideas and really think of, in the past, we might have done one design, we might do 50 in a day, and we might filter those out with another AI and we get some really good ones. That's the type of future that I want to see. Unlimited creativity, rapidly done, but human-led.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Any other takes on what the future should be like, Brett, Adam?
I think the picture that Kevin's painting is a good one. I also think that it's, I can't help but get macro and existential, I think, with a lot of this. I think that as time goes on, what Kevin was just describing is like a real democratization of the type of work that we tend to do, right? It's like, if you think of a world where this stuff is at your fingertips and any person could just be like, I want an app that does this, and you type it into the box and it like literally creates it. There is a lot of like existential, like, whoa, because we've been used to, I think, having control and power, and and there is a lot of, I think, real risk that a lot of things can be impacted in negative ways. And I think that there, conversations like, how do we as a society decouple how we generate value and how we earn a living? Like, how do we kind of create a wedge where we're able to feed our families and give them healthcare and things like that, without, if AI is like sort of stomping all over many aspects of our livelihoods. So, and it's, we've been exempt from it, but it's automation through and through, right? Kevin mentioned the Industrial Revolution. This isn't our first rodeo, and I think what we've done in the past with the Industrial Revolution is like, we created a whole new crop of jobs and, white collar jobs and things like that, managerial class. And it's a good question of like, oh, are we just going to do that again? Or do we need to be like looking at things like, can we get to a future where we're able to have more leisure time, live our lives, and have the AI and the machines kind of producing capital and producing outcomes and stuff for us. It's like really fascinating, but I do think it is important to like really acknowledge the very real, like, we feel weird about this. We feel excited about it. We feel it's inevitable. If the way that this is all going, it just seems like it's going so incredibly fast. It does feel inevitable that this stuff is only going to get better and more sort of embedded in more aspects of our work and beyond. So we have to be having these conversations about like, how do we protect people so that, we're not just like going through this like massive, shift in labor and people's livelihoods are getting, are evaporating overnight. So I think that it's hard because it's also ultimately gets at, sort of more like the political or societal level of things. But I do think that kind of zooming back into our world, I think that it's happening. I think it's going to continue to happen. I agree with Kevin that it's like, these are tools in our toolkit, but they're also tools that can help us go a lot faster, which removes a lot of the need for a lot of manual labor. So we just need to acknowledge those realities.
Yeah, Adam, just before I bring you in, if I may, there was just a question that came up, and I have to ask it, unfortunately or fortunately. NT is wondering, recently a designer mentioned how he did not find model inside a model pattern in design system component library. How do you convince this kind of designer to use the available patterns rather than creating unusual patterns?
Modal inside a modal pattern.
Yeah, that's nice.
Right? It's
sounding like one.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's just like, oh, it's not recommended, or it's either not recommended, or
but designers have strong opinions, Brad. So
yeah, and so this is the thing. Our colleague Josh wrote this really fantastic article about how product teams can continue moving at their own pace. The design system doesn't need to be the arbiter of all UI for any product that's needed. If you need a modal inside a modal component and it doesn't exist in the design system, you are free to go build that on your own, design and build that on your own. The design system shouldn't drop everything it's doing in order to account for that use case. And similarly, the design system shouldn't necessarily be like, no, you can't do that verboten forever. It's like if you have a need for this thing, sorry, we don't have it. You go ahead and build it on your own, but report back, like tell us how it goes. And if it's a good idea, if it's a good pattern, we will bring that into the design system. These kind of work at different pace layers, right? The sort of product level and the design system layer kind of need to be able to work at their own paces and have sort of a good feedback loop between the pace layers in order to be successful. So I dropped a link in the chat, but that would be like how we would advise that. If a product team needs modal inside a modal, the design system doesn't have it, we'll be like, great, like we'll add that to the backlog to explore. But in the meantime, you're free to knock yourself out and let us know if there's anything we could do to help like guide that work if you'd welcome it.
Well, that's a very diplomatic answer, and I like that.
How it goes, man. That's what this work is. It's all diplomacy.
It is. But coming back to the future, I guess, Adam, you didn't have a final word around what we should or what we want to see in the future in the space of design system, measuring design system, or anything really.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can really predict the future. We can certainly guess, but I think if you look back at history a little bit, whenever there's been an advancement in certain tools, in a lot of cases, not every case, but in a lot of cases, the people who are great at their craft benefit from those tools. So a really great photographer benefits from Photoshop, for instance. Whereas if you're just like myself, I am not a good photographer. Photoshop doesn't help me. Photoshop isn't helping me become a great photographer. But if you're already great, it pushes you even higher. So I think a lot of these tools that are coming out, if you're a great artist, if you're an artist in the sense of what you do, right? You could be, an artist could be a developer, it could be a designer. It doesn't necessarily mean painting, right? But I think if you're great at what you do, you'll be able to find ways to leverage AI to be even better at what you do. And so I agree with Kevin and Brad, and that I think it's going to be human led. But if you're able to leverage your skill set, I think that's where the 10x improvements that you hear about come from. You're going to see the person who's already really great improve their skills by 10x. And so I think that's what we should all be looking forward towards is how do we use these tools to improve my skills, make myself better, to become even better at what I do.
Excellent. Now that's a wonderful ending of wonderful meets that we've been having in order to spend together. Thank you so much for all your wonderful insights and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. And I can't wait to hang out together in person, hopefully very, very soon. So thank you so much for that. And maybe just everyone, now that you are still here, I don't know, what would be like a really nice sort of vegetable that connects us all I don't know, somehow I think about apples, but I want to feel about like carrots. Is there a carrot emoji? I think there must be a carrot emoji, right? So everyone, please, a healthy round of healthy carrot emoji for the wonderful panel with Adam, Brad, and Kevin joining us in this wonderful adventure today. Well, I'm excited to see what kind of emoji we're going to get. That's good. Thank you so much for coming, Brad, Kevin,
Thanks,
and Adam.
everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye now.